Before there were gods, there was night, and out of her silence came sound, a low hum that carried across the emptiness of the cosmos. It wasn't thunder, or wind, or waves. It was the rhythm of something being spun. The Greeks called her Nyx, the mother of shadows, the first dream. From her breath came all that lives and all that ends, death and sleep, hope and doom, and three daughters whose hands would decide the fate of everything that ever was. They were called the Moirai, the Fates. They didn't rule Olympus. They didn't need to. Even Zeus, the great thunderer, would pause before them. Because while he could command the skies, they commanded the thread that tied him to existence. Every life began with the soft sound of thread touching the spindle. Every death, with the snip of a blade sharper than time itself. And between those two sounds, an entire life was woven. The first sister was Clotho, the spinner. Her fingers never stopped moving, pulling the silk of life from the void, twisting it into a thread so fine that even the gods could not see where it began. The second was Lachesis, the measurer. She stretched the thread along her staff and whispered, "This far." And the last, Atropos, the inflexible, held the shears. When she closed them, there was silence, the kind that even thunder could not disturb. The Fates did not laugh or cry or rest. They simply worked, patient, eternal, invisible. And in their weaving, the world took shape. Sometimes, in the gleaming halls of Olympus, the gods would wonder which of them truly held power. Was it Zeus with his lightning, Athena with her wisdom, or the quiet weavers who never left their loom? No one dared to ask aloud. They all knew the answer, because even the thunder had to wait its turn. There was a day, long ago, when the Fates visited the hearth of a mortal queen named Althea. A newborn cried in her arms, her son, Meleager. The flames beside her burned steady and bright, and from the shadows, three figures appeared, their eyes reflecting the glow. "The child will live," said Clotho, "as long as this fire burns." Then they vanished, leaving behind only the whisper of thread. Althea froze, her hands trembled, and before anyone could speak, she seized the log from the flames, quenched it in water, and hid it away. A mother, defying destiny. Years passed. Meleager grew into a warrior, brave and admired, but he carried something dark, a spark of rage that burned hotter than any forge. And when that fire turned against his own blood, killing his uncle, the echo reached his mother's ears. They say she stood before her hearth once more. The hidden log lay in her hands, damp but unburned. She looked at it for a long time, not as wood, but as a life. Her life, his life. The sound of the Fates' spindle filled her head, and she whispered, "So be it." When she dropped it into the fire, the thread burned red, then turned to ash. Sometimes destiny isn't written in the stars. It's written in the choices we make when our hearts are breaking. They say mortals can never outrun what's been woven. But still, they try. They run, they bargain, they pray, and the more they resist, the tighter the thread becomes. In Thebes, a king once sought to cheat the Fates. He was told that his son would grow up to kill him. So he did what fear always does. He tried to destroy what he loved. But the child, Oedipus, was spared, carried away to another kingdom. He grew up far from home, certain that he could shape his own life. Yet every path he chose led him back to the prophecy he tried to escape. When he finally understood, it was already too late. He cursed the gods, cursed himself, cursed the cruel hands that had written his story. But in truth, it wasn't cruelty. It was inevitability. For every time he turned from his fate, he walked straight into its arms. The Greeks understood this strange irony of life, that in fighting what we fear, we often become it, that the more we resist the truth, the closer it follows. And yet fate is not only tragedy, it can also be choice. On the plains of Troy, under a sky thick with dust and arrows, stood Achilles, the greatest warrior of Greece. He knew what the fates had offered him: two paths, two threads. One would stretch long and safe, a quiet life far from war, forgotten by time. The other would burn bright and short, a death young, but a name that would never fade. Achilles stared at the horizon, the walls of Troy glimmering like gold in the sun. And he smiled, not out of joy, but clarity. He understood something that few men ever do, that it is not how long the thread runs that gives it meaning, but what we weave into it. He chose the flame, and in doing so, became immortal in the only way a mortal can. Even the gods, for all their power, bowed to what the fates decreed. When Zeus sought to decide the outcome of battles, he did not simply throw thunderbolts. He looked to the scales of destiny. He weighed the lives of men, of heroes and kings, and when the scale tipped, he knew the outcome was never his to command, because above Olympus, beyond even lightning, the loom of the fates continued to spin. And sometimes, when the gods quarreled among themselves, the fates would intervene. When Hades, lord of the underworld, stole Persephone, daughter of Demeter, into his shadowed realm, the world above fell into mourning. Crops withered, rivers slowed, even sunlight seemed afraid to rise. Zeus demanded justice, Hades demanded love, and Persephone demanded choice. So the fates were summoned, three silent judges in gray. They listened to no argument, no plea. Lachesis held up 6 pomegranate seeds, gleaming red in her palm, one for each month Persephone would spend in the underworld. 6 months with her mother. 6 months with her husband, a balance perfectly measured. When Lachesis closed her hand, winter and spring were born. Even in divine chaos, there was order. And once again, the world remembered. The fates were not cruel, only fair. But what of them? These sisters who see all, who shape all, do they feel what they create? Do they ever hesitate before cutting the thread? No mortal can answer that. But imagine this. Clotho pauses, the thread trembling between her fingers. It glows softly, pulsing like a heartbeat. For a moment, she wonders what this life will become. A hero, a mother, a poet, a soldier. She does not know. She only spins. Lachesis lifts her staff and measures, whispering, "Not too short, not too long, just enough to learn." And Atropos waits, silent as stone, until the moment comes when all that can be lived has been lived. Then she closes her shears, and the sound is both an ending and a beginning. The Greeks believed that somewhere, even the gods feared that sound, because it meant that no matter how high they rose, time would still reach them, that even divinity must bow to the design of existence itself. Across centuries, artists and philosophers have tried to understand this mystery. Aristotle imagined the sisters as time itself, Clotho spinning the present, Lachesis drawing the future, Atropos guarding the unchangeable past. Plato saw them as voices of harmony, singing the music of creation. And maybe that's the truest image of all, that the fates don't just decide when we die. They sing everything into being. Every joy, every sorrow, every heartbeat we've ever had is a note in their song. The Greeks weren't alone in seeing life as a thread. In the cold north, the Norns of Norse myth carved destiny into the roots of the world tree. In the islands of Korea, a goddess named Kamyunjangagi wove the fortunes of mortals and outcasts alike. Across the world, in every tongue, humanity has whispered the same question. If everything is written, what is the point of choice? If our endings are decided, why keep living? And the answer, perhaps, is this. Because even if the thread is set, the colors are ours to choose. Fate might give you a length, but it doesn't choose how you fill it. You can weave in love or bitterness. You can braid it with courage or fear. You can spend it hiding or shining. And when the shears finally close, what remains is not the thread, but the tapestry you left behind. The ancients feared the fates, but they also built temples for them, carved their names in marble, and offered black sheep in gratitude, not to escape death, but to thank them for life. For in their spinning, there was fairness. In their silence, there was peace. Maybe that's why their myth still endures. Because deep down, we all know what they knew. That life is not about control, it's about surrender. That destiny is not a prison, it's a path. And that somewhere, in the hum between birth and death, a thread is still being spun. Quietly, endlessly, for you. So when you look at the stars tonight, remember what the Greeks believed. Each glimmer in the sky is not just a sun or a world, but a thread that has been released. A life that burned, that ended, and became light again. Maybe fate is not the end. Maybe it's the moment you realize that every choice, every heartbreak, every triumph was never wasted. It was all part of the weave. The loom never stops. The song never ends. And one day, when your thread joins the stars, you'll see what they always saw. That destiny, at its heart, isn't about what we lose. It's about what we leave behind.